Control T for transform. And then you can see up in edit here. Edit is like editing the current thing that you're working on. There's a transform. And then, you get some transform options in here like scale. And it'll bring up the same thing. But yeah, Control T is the way that I do this because it's something that comes up constantly.
I just started I just spent the day painting a forest scene with mountains and sky and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I just started a new layer, and I was putting a unicorn on top of it, and I think the unicorn's too big. So that was a good time to answer the question, because I like the way that I blocked it out and everything, and I haven't really started drawing on it yet, or changing, the way it looks. I was like, am I even going to use this? Because it's just like a perfect unicorn shaped stamp right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't sure if I was just going to start over because I didn't know how to reshape or resize it. That absolutely helps.
Yeah, there's a lot of very little, very, very basic things that will completely throw you off if you just don't know what question to ask. That's really, really typical. So please don't be shy about that. It's never the sort of thing the thing that's wonderful about digital art is there's never anything that really forces you to just throw the whole thing in the garbage and start over. Because if you're working on a piece of masonite or a piece of paper, you can ruin your surface. Anybody who's played around with art materials has ruined a surface before, right? But you can't ruin a PSD. I thought I did a couple of times, but I learned more about what was going on and it got better.
Right. I'm starting to really like it. I have a tiny little Huion tablet.
How tiny?
Probably slightly bigger than a cell phone.
Oh my God.
With no screen. Yeah.
I use the one without the screen too. And I think Huion's a good brand, but I think you're using the too small one.
Yes, you're right.
It's about $40 to get yourself a 6x10, which is the size I use, Huion, from Amazon. You could have it delivered tomorrow.
I could, and I probably will. I got this because I wasn't sure if I was ever going to be able to run Photoshop or have a computer that would do that. So I was just using it to play around on my crappy little laptop. But now I'm kind of just getting the hang of how to use it and how it's working for me, and I like it quite a bit. The pen is just starting to become comfortable on my hand, but there's the buttons. I keep mashing the buttons, and I'm not even sure if they're doing anything, but it freaks me out.
I have buttons on the side of my tablet. I don't touch them.
Mine are on my pen, right where my hand.
Oh yeah. On the pen, I mapped one of them to be the lasso tool. So that way, if I hold it down and then I let go of it, it goes back to I can mask out an area. So especially if I with the rocker on the back does right click, which brings up the context menu for the brush. And then the forward does a lasso tool for me. There I go, this. And I can, softly shade an area, isolated area, which can be really useful if I were to want to add a shadow across the side of a face. I can, select it out and then,
Well, that's really cool.
It's easy, right? The second most powerful tool behind the brush tool is the selection tools. And so up here, you have the rectangular, elliptical marquees, both very powerful. Just grab a square of something and grab it and move it.
I have not done that yet.
So the square marquee, super powerful. Elliptical marquee, also very, very strong. One of the things I like about it is I use it as a kind of, you can hold shift or to make it perfect circle. And then if you fill that, you can make you can use it as kind of a template.
Okay.
So it's being able to make a selection means that you can affect just a very specific area of a canvas, very powerfully. So Um, the rectangular and elliptical marquees, super powerful. Like if I wanted to give this girl halo, right, I can do this, make an elliptical marquee, and then, have
Okay, so it's like a
ellipsis.
stencil almost.
Yeah, just like as a stencil. But you can also make a custom stencil, the lasso tool here. And you can make it with straight edges or have it try to go, the magnetic one tries to follow the contours of like the edges of things. Mostly I just use the freeform lasso. And so you can go and, lasso around the silhouette of something pretty quick to make a selection. And then, use that stencil for whatever you need, right? Very powerful. And it's quick too. And then you can hit Control D, deselect it. But I actually have that. It's powerful. It's so powerful. I have it mapped to my the rocker on the.
Because you use it all the time.
I didn't used to. It was this year. I had a friend who told me, "Oh, I have the lasso tool marked on my pen button," because I'd only ever used the right click to bring up context menu, and that otherwise I never touched it. And I said, "Wow, that lasso tool." Being able to like bounce back and forth between the lasso tool and the paintbrush like that is an incredibly powerful workflow. I should do that. And then my left hand being on the keyboard all the time, I have, one of the most powerful hotkeys in Photoshop is the spacebar.
Yeah.
Spacebar allows you to navigate. Spacebar control allows you to zoom in. Spacebar alt allows you to zoom out.
How do you zoom in and out while holding the spacebar? What do you just scroll or?
No, spacebar alt is zoom out, spacebar control is zoom in. So your left hand is like your thumb goes on top of the spacebar, and then you have like your ring finger or whatever over on the controller alt.
I'm really glad that I wound up doing this.
Yeah, the basics of this stuff are really important because it's like if you're like having to like go to your scroll bars to like move around to like see what you're doing. Really painful. Like you should be able to move in intuitively on an area, make a selection, quickly brush it in, deselect it, make another selection. Like you should be able to have.
Before you stop doing that, can you show me what like the second thing you do after you select the area is?
Oh, after I select the area, I have the paintbrush tool on, and the big circle you see, that's just my paintbrush. And so I'm just hitting it. It's just black.
So it just naturally stays in there. I don't have to select anything like, stay in this area.
Well, that's what the selection is.
Okay.
And then you can go and hit it and make another selection somewhere else. Or you can hold Shift and expand the selection. Or you can hold Alt and reduce the selection. You can hold Shift and Alt together and make it so that only the place where they intersect stay around.
It's really cool.
There's a lot of options, and it's a lot of it is just the bottom left the bottom left corner of the keyboard. Shift Control Alt and the keys near there are all super powerful. Like the same hotkeys that you can use in Microsoft Word. Control C, Control V can copy and paste.
That I figured out.
Yeah. So, but you can also modify it. Shift Control C does copy merge, which means it's going to grab all of the layers and not just the one I'm on. So if I wanted to relocate the face on here, I would lasso this up, Shift Control C, Control V, and now I see I've got that lasso select. And if I decide that I've fucked the whole thing up, I just Control Z back until I got back to where I was.
Okay.
And that's all in like the bottom left of the keyboard there is the basic controls. And if you find yourself getting really struggling with like doing something that feels like it should be intuitive, like just presume that there's actually like a simple command or hotkey that will do what you need.
Notice you have a subscriber count on the bottom. What's that all about?
Oh, we're just going to ignore that. This is my layout for Twitch also. Stream element. Turn that off.
Oh, I want to go subscribe now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I stream on here once a week, but I stream over there 3 times a week.
Good to know.
And I am really thankful that I got asked to stream here because streaming over here allowed me to negotiate for a better rate when I was asked to be streaming over there.
Very cool.
So yeah, big thanks to the Midjourney community for coming out and supporting me and like helping me boost my overall streaming career. But yeah, see, I'm like off base right now with my own thing here. Get things recentered and start to slowly pick away at this. So the majority of what gets done in Photoshop is the brush tool. The brush tool is kind of, you can do everything theoretically. You don't really need to learn much else. Like, because if you just treat it like a canvas, like what else would you need? You know, you get to mark however you feel like. And that's the whole game. It's really, Photoshop is so much more than that. And it's so much, people are always like, oh yeah, you got undo. I'm like, I don't really use undo that much. There are so many interesting things about Photoshop that go so far beyond undo. Like just the fact that like, you know, have you ever done any kind of traditional painting? Like acrylic or?
Yes. Pretty much what all I've ever done.
Yeah, like, you know, like, with, you know what I'm talking about? And
I just use water, but
well, even if like you have like a fully thick paint, some of them they dry kind of clear.
yeah.
The pigment here is like it's infinitely thin in the sense that it can layer over itself as loosely as you need, but it's also as opaque or transparent as you need all the time. So it's, you know, with acrylic paint, you need to like, if you want to like spread it smoothly, you also are kind of like making it more transparent. Like you have to link a lot of these properties. But digital paint has whatever property you desire all the time. Like people think like that brushes are the important part, but it's actually the control over the pigment that is like the really, really powerful part, because that's just not a level of control that you get over traditional media.
There were some people up that wanted to ask questions, but I think they took back their request.
Oh, that's fine.
Feel selfish here, like hogging you all to myself. Though. I don't want to do that.
I know. This is like anybody who's kind of thinking about any of these things in the audience. You know, many people are dealing with the same issues and they are not vocalizing. So when somebody stands up and vocalizes very common questions, I always appreciate it because it gives me the opportunity to speak to all the people who are going to be quiet, and they get to get that experience without having to like put themselves forward.
So, but if somebody does ask, like, have their hand raised, you want me to let them on, right?
Yeah, we can bring people on starting right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to tell everybody at the audience what's going on, I'm Pete Mohrbacher. I'm a digital artist of the classic variety, where I build a lot of my paintings in Photoshop. And I'm going to be doing a little study today. Got this image off of Pinterest. I do studies like this most days, and I post them over on my Discord. You can find it through my profile. And the website for that, it's for a school that I'm building. You can find the website for that at huckleberry.art. We've just started doing classes this week, and we're going to be expanding into more and more stuff as time goes on. Really want to get some big stuff done by the end of the year. And what was the question?
I'm sorry, I thought you were. I didn't realize you were going to continue talking, but I do have not why.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Cool. All right. Sorry about that. YWY, you're invited up. guess you're just waiting on him, but you should just continue what you were talking about.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do at Huckleberry is a lot of people are doing daily studies and weekly challenges, just for their own, personal enrichment. And that's all free. We just do it over on our Discord. And I upload references just about every day. Like this one, it's the one I uploaded today. And then, you can take a shot at trying to do your own study from it. And if you have any questions or whatever, as you run into issues, you can hop in our very active voice chat and ask our many expert artists that hang out there every single day. They're not even paid. They just kind of like to hang out and chit chat all day. So they're an amazing resource and a lot of fun to hang out with. So I hang out in there when I have time. I'm available for questions in there as well. And we're, building this community of people who are curious about learning art.
Cool. Okay, so I'm not seeing this guy come up, but he can request again if he wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we get a lot of that. There's like Ancient Chaos usually is like bringing people up in batches, and then some of them just like evaporate into the mist. Ancient Chaos is here in the audience today.
You have Dame on the way.
Wait, totally.
Dame, I have invited you on stage, so.
Hello, Dame.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you for everything you've already cleared up, and you can't?
It's coming through. You're coming through just fine.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to thank you from all of us for everything you've already taught us and clarified. And I also had a little question regarding Adobe, since you earlier mentioned that it was a bit shady sometimes. Do you have any experience with the inlayer program where you would, for instance, design cards for card games or card decks?
No, I've never used it. I worked with InDesign a little bit when I was getting my last book out.
Okay, so you used InDesign from Adobe?
Just a little bit. I really wouldn't say I know the program well. I was just hacking together what other people gave me.
Okay, yeah, sorry, because I wanted to ask for either a little question about this or your experience with it, or just a substitute program that I could benefit from instead of using that, since you didn't really rate Adobe the highest.
Yeah, well, Adobe, a lot of their most experienced engineers have long exited the company, and they're kind of been in maintenance mode, using a lot of overseas contractors, to keep the company running. And they're sort of notorious for pushing unstable updates, and they also have deregistered licenses for lifetime software licenses that I purchased a long time ago, and swapped them out for subscription products, which bothers me that lifetime licenses don't get honored over a lifetime. It's pretty frustrating. And now there's like a little bit of a push to have free alternatives as well as single pay alternatives in order to allow people to do this stuff without having to like constantly pay a subscription fee to get access to updates that they don't even want. I only recently updated to Adobe CC, Photoshop CC, from CS6, which is like a 20-year-old version of Photoshop, or 15 years old, something like that.
Mm.
Yeah, that's my relationship with Adobe, is that they have been, they want my money, and they don't like the fact that last time they got money was 15 years ago.
Yeah, so it's mostly due to lack of loyalty to their customers and not the product itself.
Yeah, I would say that they are a company that is different. Like, they were probably a different company, 15, 20 years ago, but who knows what's going on with them now. They don't seem particularly responsive, and they're also, I think a lot of they've had some really serious brain drain over the course of that time as well.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for asking a slightly unrelated question. It was just one of the things that I was wondering about after you mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. I'll leave the stage.
Okay.
Thanks for coming up. Aku is here to ask a question.
So what I'm doing with this figure right now is I'm trying to look one of the things that's important to remember about what an artist is doing is I'm not looking at the whole picture. I'm only looking at like teeny tiny segments, individual features of the image. Like these little like visual slices. And so at first I'm just looking at like blocking in the major physical features like the hands and the shoulder and the face, and sort of approximating like their size and position based off of the reference. And now I'm also trying to make sure that I'm gathering some amount of the information from the lighting, like the shadow being across the neck and the face here. And I'm gonna be nothing yet, but it will be. Bit by bit, we're going to be taking segments of this image and bringing them in sort of as like slices. So the next thing,
come up.
Yeah. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of softness to this. We'll round it out a little bit with some airbrush. There's often very, very soft transitions that happen across the figure. Like you can see that there's like this kind of spotlight on her, right? Dropped it out. There's this sort of spotlight that's on her. And you can see that because like the underside of the hand and arm here are actually kind of darker. And there's this gradient that sort of starts at the middle and darkens as it gets down here. And we're going to depict that as these big soft brush strokes to try to like get those softer, longer transitions brought in early before we get any of these like more defined features of the face or like, broader sense of lighting inside the figure. We don't want to get to the point where we're defining individual details and edges or anything. We just want to get the biggest possible shapes in here because all of the smaller, more detailed bits are going to sit inside of that. So we typically you're probably not thinking about the image just like the same way that you would see when you're like far away and squinting your eyes. I actually keep the little navigator up here in the corner specifically to be able to like get a clearer sense on what the thing looks like when it's sort of out of focus, far away. And the goal is to try to like get this, the way that the image I want the image on the right to look as much as I can like the image on the left.
How did you get the navigator?
Oh, the navigator? Oh, the navigator, if you go up to window here, this is a whole list of possible windows that you can open up. And then you can grab them and rearrange them however you want. They can nest together or go into panels. I have my brush windows here. So you can like nest them into like little pop-out areas, or you can have them up 100% of the time and stack them. And then you can like change the relative sizes, scaling things up and down like this.
Awesome. You want to talk to Echo?
Sure.
All right. Let me get her up here. Cool. Have you got the invite?
Usually it takes a second for Discord to figure out what's going on.
Okay, there it goes.
Echo, hello.
Oh, hi. It's like really a treat for me to see you because it's like 4:30 a.m. here, so I always miss you. And I've had a question that I wanted to ask you for a while. We'll ask any I don't want to sound rude, but permanently employed artist for the you know what I mean.
Well, technically I've been unemployed for the last decade, but yeah.
But you're a working artist, so but forget about the paying, the working bit. So
a lot of people, when they were young, when they were little, they drew, they painted, they were constantly doing things, and then life gets in the way, or they never really did anything and life still got in the way. And then later on, they want to either re-begin, go back to their art, or they want to start art, but then they feel this huge monster in the room that sits there, that in front of their want. And it's very hard to express, but to get back to what they used to love and enjoy and do a lot, or something that they've wanted to love and enjoy and start to do, but the actual first step, maybe performance anxiety, maybe whatever it is, blocks a lot of people. How would you recommend people get over that and jump into the pool?
Well, I think one of the things that could really help with that is understanding the issue a little more closely, because it is like the barrier that prevents people from doing that is sort of invisible. Like, it's unclear what it is, the feeling that like stops people from making that choice. Because there is a certain amount of like, well, maybe I'll feel foolish by playing around with this thing that other people are good at, and I'm not only going to be bad at it, but I'm also going to be somebody who's later in life and I'm bad at it. I should be more experienced and wise, and yet here I am having kids run around circles. I don't think that's it. I think there is a little bit of like the sense that you'd be feel foolish if you weren't accomplished at it. But I talked to a lot of professional artists about the way they feel about their work. And I find that they have the exact same feeling about making personal artwork when they're like a working professional. That they have the exact same feeling of resistance to making things that are for them and making choices to sort of do the activities that they enjoy genuinely, even though they could do them very, very well. Which is interesting. You would think that like this would be a problem that is exclusive to people who are feeling anxiety about them, not being able to perform well. But, there's people I know who are masters of their craft and they still struggle with this same problem. I think some of it comes back to the reality that like, most people are generally pretty bad at doing things for themselves. I know, like, we think of people as being kind of selfish. By that's sort of like it's easier to be selfish than to be selfless. But I think the reality is that like it actually is kind of difficult for us to choose selfishness in a lot of cases, because most people are very empathetic, and we if there was somebody. If you discover that there was some reason why making artwork would benefit someone you cared about, I don't think you would have the same level of resistance.
True. Very true.
We people I know, everyday normal people, will go to extraordinary lengths to benefit their friends and their family, and like they will go through hardship and they will make sacrifices, and that is just what people do. That's the way that we operate together, is that we're always sacrificing for each other. And even in a job, like, you people are willing to put forth tremendous effort for a job that doesn't love them back, because, there's somebody who is asking you to do it. Like, we're beholden to other people. These desires are externalized. And so I see that as being a really big part of what that experience is. That resistance comes from the I think in large part, for the difficulty of us self-motivating. That like self-motivation is really, really hard. It's inherently hard. So like a lot of the strategies I talk to professionals about when it comes to them trying to self-start on creative projects for their own pleasure and for their own benefit, comes about externalizing a lot of the plans that they make. So it's about writing lists. It's about having coaches. It's about having friends or family members help them with accountability. Because when we are feeling like we're doing something that's accountable to other people, it changes our relationship with that activity. So a lot of people take classes for this reason. Continuing education classes for art are very, very popular. And, that's because it's like, well, when you've paid $300 for a class, there's a teacher who tells you that you need to do something. It's like, it's different than you choosing on a Sunday to go out to the art store, buy a bunch of materials, and sit down at your kitchen table. Going to get the same amount done, whether you have somebody telling you the basics of watercolor, or if you just open up YouTube and look up the basics of watercolor. But the level of accountability is different. Because we just feel differently when it's for something else, when somebody is telling us we should do it, or like for someone else's benefit. That just changes the math in our minds. And so I have a lot of trouble. I've had a lot of trouble. I still do with executive function. I'm a little bit on the spectrum. It overlaps with like ADHD, and I have a very hard time telling myself to do something and then going ahead and doing that thing. Like, I need to fold laundry. Everybody has some trouble like getting to chores or whatever, but my life, I've had very big problems with it. Like, having problems filing taxes late, and having problems dealing with getting homework assignments done, or, there's been all kinds of issues where I need to do something. I know I need to do it. It's highly important to me, and yet I can't seem to make the choice to go ahead and do that. I think I even lost $1 million because of that. I had I had a fabulous amount of funding on Kickstarter for a book that wasn't done, and all I needed to do was focus on the book and get it done, and I would have, like not only fulfilled all these pre-orders, but I would have had all this inventory to sell to all these people. And instead, it took me 5 years because of the amount of procrastination that was involved in.
That's my middle name, though.
Yeah. And so I have worked really hard to try to figure out what do I need to do in order to do the things that I mean to do. So I have worked really hard on habits that involve externalizing these tasks, turning them into turning them into a kind of rote mechanical operation, rather than allowing them to have strong emotional weight. Like, oh, the alarm's going off. It's time for me to sit down and do this thing, which sometimes it all kind of sometimes works. There's nothing bullet here, but externalizing these forces ends up making a big, big difference in how likely I am to be able to get to this stuff. The other thing that's a big factor is, I find that making art is a little bit of emotional labor, and when I'm feeling emotionally drained and burnt out, it's really, really hard for me to sit down and choose to do what I want to do, and that makes sitting down and making art very, very hard. So
Do you find in a case like that, if you actually sat down with other artists, that the bouncing of the creativity would stabilize you into and get rid of the burn?
Yeah, sometimes I do that. Like, I got in the last few years, I got really, I got in the habit of spending a lot of time on Discord servers with voice chat, because I was able to find Discord voice chat servers with artists, and so I'd hang out there and paint and chat with them while I would work, and there would be a sort of collective working atmosphere that people, just popping in and out of, and I'd be meeting new people and getting them to talk to them about one of my favorite subjects, and it would just it would make the topic of what I was supposed to be focusing on, art, as opposed to whatever I was being distracted with. I found that to be pretty helpful.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, art is very from the inside of us.
It is.
And you externalizing that with your art. So yeah. Thank you very much, Peter,
My pleasure.
for sharing that. If you have any weird questions to ask me, go ahead too. I don't mind.
I can't think of any. I mean, this is a very common topic of conversation.
Yeah. I wanted to ask for other people because, well, for me, I've always done art, but I got away from the drawing and everything. I was a ceramic artist. And then for health reasons, I couldn't do it. And then I did 3D modeling instead. And then it's just kind of weird. And now into generative art and generative video, which I'm enjoying too, and a little bit of starting again with digital drawing my own stuff, but very privately. And I think you're right. It should come out, should be shared, should be, I don't know. I do have a big block about that. I will sit and do stuff by myself and then never share it ever. And
Yeah.
I have no idea why.
I know many people who are in a situation where they don't feel comfortable asking for attention with their work. Feel like any attempt to share it is a plea for attention that they don't feel comfortable with. That come from a lot of different sources. Like I found that there's not a lot of universal truth when it comes to that. It's a common fear, but it emanates from a lot of different experiences.
And do you ever suffer from imposter syndrome, which I'm sure we all do at some point in our lives?
I've heard the definition of imposter syndrome many times, and I'm still a little unsure of if we're all talking about the same thing all the time.
I think it's one of those things where it's objective. It's like when you reach a certain, it's also a spectrum. Let's use that word there. So imagine you are 21 or 25 or 27 and you sit down and have a drink and you still feel like you're not legal age to drink. That's a sort of imposter syndrome where you don't feel like you're an adult, but you are. And then when you're an artist and you become successful and you're getting paid well for it and you feel like, they shouldn't be paying me this much for this. Am I really worthy of it? Or, that's also imposter syndrome. It's like, I think it's a broad spectrum. It can fit anything. So in the case of an artist, I would say somebody who's very admired, who's being paid well, who's considered to be extremely talented, who inside feels like maybe they're not.
Every artist I've ever met has a certain amount of the feeling of like they are, they're just kind of getting lucky and faking it.
Yeah.
And like they understand that it's like a normal feeling, but there is a sense that there's kind of a ticking clock until they're discovered. And
Yeah, but-
they're out on bail. They could, but if they were to work hard enough, they could potentially get to the point where they would be genuinely capable and not pretend capable the way that they've been showing up until that point. And I had a conversation this morning. I just started a mentorship class with it, and 2 out of the 5 people that signed up were working professional artists. And I was asking them, like, what are you doing here? Like, I was expecting a bunch of people who were early and stuck in their career. And it was these 2 seasoned professionals that showed up, both independently of each other. And they both basically said the same thing. Like, I'm in my 30s. I'm getting older. I really don't feel like I ever quite got good. And I'm worried that, like, as everyone around me is getting better and I'm just getting left behind. And it's like they just feel like, despite the fact that they've become accomplished in an incredibly competitive field, and they have retained that position for a decade or more, 15 years plus, they still feel like they're hanging on by their fingernails in terms of like their reputation and their, professional network. But like whenever I interrogate them about it, okay, so how do you find jobs? Well, I just find jobs to people I've already worked with. And I'm like, you worked with a lot of people? Oh yeah, over 15 years, I've worked with all these different studios. I'm like, do you work through an agency or do you just have relationships with them directly? Oh yeah, they just reach out to me. I don't actually ever look for work. They just come to me whenever they need something. There's all these different people that reach out to me, and that they all seek me out, and I don't even have a presence on the internet because I don't even need to tell people about who I am because I already have more work than I can handle. And also I'm incompetent, and they're coming for me. Sort of their feeling. I think I felt like that a little bit more when I was younger, but I haven't had a job in 10 years. I've had a little bit of work here and there, a little bit of freelance. I did a little bit of teaching at a local institution for like a few weeks. Nothing made. I've been self-employed this whole time. And so
But that doesn't mean you don't have a job. You work for yourself. You do have a job. You do.
I haven't been granted. I've been created my own. And so I often think about like it. For a while, I was like, well, the bottom's going to drop out any day. Like everyone's going to go find another artist to like, or there's going to be some, I'm going to run out of ideas. Like I need to keep making new ideas. And one of these days, like I'm just going to be out. Well's going to be dry. And then it's just going to be a countdown till the whole thing winds to zero and it'll be all over. I don't know. After many, many years of having this sword of Damocles kind of dangle over my head, I just stopped worrying about it. Just partially because I noticed how contingent everybody else felt like their art careers were. And realizing that like I was in a more stable position than most of my peers because I was being granted a job by 10,000 people, tens of thousands of people buying stuff from me, while they're, being granted a job by the pleasure of one or two people who were hiring. And that if somebody grew to dislike my art for whatever reason, there was 9,999 more people behind them that were perfectly happy to continue to support me. And all I needed to do was maintain some sort of net positive relationship with this crowd of people, and I would be able to retain some level of support for the foreseeable future. And I've gained a lot of I've gained a lot of sense of stability knowing that my relationship is with a group rather than with a individual. I think that some of the imposter syndrome that's out in the creative field, some of it comes from the creativity part. I think that we come by that naturally. But I also think some of it comes from the systemic abuse of creative people and the way that they're always meant to feel like that their value is contingent. And like, like in every industry where creative people are employed, they're made to feel like they are creating a commodity and that they're replaceable. And it's like largely true.
But I think more than anything in the artistic world, there's also the kingmakers, the critics who decide who is in and who is out. Not in commercial art, but in pure art, And commercial art is more like a corporate decision, who's going to be good for the job.
Number of art directors, number of gatekeepers.
True. And so it's not always contingent on your talent. It's contingent on whether the guy's going to like the smell of you or not, or if he sees it's beneficial for him to pick you for the job. So I think in that way, I felt that with my ceramic art. I did traditional ceramics, which just sold anyway, but then anything contemporary was coming from me, and you'd have to, really work to find the market for it and to whatever. And I think it's the same for any kind of artist. Yeah. Anyway, I think I've been talking for way too long. I better let you go, and somebody else has their hand up, I think.
Sure.
Right, Kinky?
It's a nice meeting you.
Yeah, it was wonderful meeting you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. So I'm just adding a little bit of color here using my blending modes. Blending modes are so cool. Do you know blending modes?
I am watching you. Galfrey's here. You want to talk to her too?
Yeah.
All right. And I'm being very careful because I just to let you know, I can't hear whoever's coming on the stage for some reason because Discord's being Discord.
Yeah.
So if you need me to do anything, let me know because I literally can only hear you.
Scream out.
So here comes Gallifrey. I love what you're doing. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Hey, Gallifrey.
Hi, Pete. How are you?
Doing good?
I hope you're feeling better.
I'm feeling great, actually.
Good. Glad to hear it. I was mesmerized by how you painted in those blasted hands. Hands, noses, and ears are like the bane of my existence as I try to do these figure studies world.
And eyes and heads and hair.
Those are the big ones, though. Feet too, but the hands are just terrible.
You're naming all the
Actually-
parts of the body.
Yeah, the hair, the eyebrows, the chest, the waist. Actually, they've always been the bane of my existence. I think that's why I feel more comfortable doing landscapes. That's changing though because of you here and at Huckleberry and on Twitch. It's cool to see it render live in front of me as you do your studies. Oh, I wanted to mention that Eku makes some excellent videos of her AI render. She's a great visual storyteller.
Oh, okay.
Eku, if you're still listening,
I knew
send
that you-
Pete your link.
Feel free to DM me.
Yeah.
Look-
So I see this in all of your study streams, those on Discord and those on Twitch. Can you speak again to the way you cut in the background color? Is there a reason why you choose not to simply lay down a color and texture under everything instead of cutting it in along the outside of your subject?
It's a dumb thing. I don't think anyone should ever do this. I feel like every
Oh.
time I bring it up, I say the same thing. Don't ever do this where you put the background over on the top. I got the habit of it. The reason I got the habit of it is because I was doing these drawings where I was doing a quick like line drawing with a little bit of tone, right? And I was doing a concept art gig. And then I was wanting to set them on black because it was a dark Gothic environment. I was like a dark Gothic project. And so it felt wrong to have these characters on a light background. So I was like, well, you need to be on a dark background. But I didn't ever lay in as I was doing these drawings, I wasn't laying in like a silhouette. It would take twice as long to lay in a silhouette that was going to be opaque and then fill the background. Because it's not twice as long, but it's longer because it's like you have to figure out where the edge of the character is, whether you're drawing the interior or the exterior, right? So
Yeah.
if you're going to go and like fill in the whole figure with a solid color in the background, you have to like go and fill in the interior area. And then you go take a background and like draw a background. And I was like, well, who cares if it's technically in front or behind? It doesn't matter to anyone because it looks the same at the end of the day. I'm just going to get to the point where I need to have a background that's separate from the character, and I'm just going to draw the background. And it was just sheer laziness. It was a very minor shortcut. And then what I discovered is that when I did it, I could spot something about this process for me personally allowed me to spot the silhouette a little bit more accurately than when I was looking at it as a positive shape. That looking at the silhouette as a negative shape gave me the ability to sort of spot things about the edge of the figure that I was like not noticing when it was a positive shape. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just keep doing that, partially out of habit. Like it the other thing that I like is that this is a phase. There's like multiple reasons why I like this, but they're all very tiny and very specific to me. I'm using a brush that is very loose, and so it doesn't cut in a very precise silhouette. But this is also a stage where I want to keep things loose. So I like the fact that I have a loose, because like otherwise I had like a tight silhouette by like, masking it in with like a lasso tool or like, filling it. There's a temptation to want to fill it in precisely. But when I was doing the background, there's something about the fact that it always felt loosely blocked in that was like appropriate for that stage. And then when I started doing this soft brush stage, I was just doing this before. And then when I started doing the soft brush stage, I realized, I don't need to be precise with my soft brush on the silhouette, because I'm going to cut the silhouette out eventually anyway, and it's going to matte on top of it. So I can use it as a means of like cutting out the remnants of the silhouette, which actually, I mean, it's not even that much of a time save, to be honest, because you can see like on this figure here, there's so much soft edges at her hair, and there's this soft lighting kind of glowing around her. I'm going to have to go and put soft edges around her again anyway later. So it's like, it's not that much of a time save. I don't recommend it. I'm willing to explain it because I don't want it to seem like it's a mysterious thing that I'm like doing for reasons that like I only I have access to. It just happens to be a very minor shortcut that stacks in nicely with the rest of my process.
Cool. I watched an artist on YouTube. They start with, when they're doing their figure studies, they start with a completely black silhouette and sculpt in with lighter colors, kind of the opposite way that most of us do it. I thought that was really interesting. I was thinking about giving that a try.
I find that working from a light, like a very light silhouette is really hard. Like early on in being an artist, I discovered it was a lot easier for me to work on toned paper because it was just so much easier to visualize my values when I could say like, okay, well, right now we have like everything's kind of middle tone, right? So I'm gonna sap out all the color here real quick. So it will let me. There we go. Okay. So like the skin tone here is not really light or dark. It's just sort of in the middle. And this means that if we wanted to, add a highlight to it, we can do that quite easily by just adding white. And if we want to add a shadow, we can do that easily as well by adding black. And being able to go in both directions from the middle is a very, very classic way of like having extra control over your values. So I usually try to speed towards having some values that are somewhere in the middle. So when I'm doing this, like you can see I'm already starting with a lighter gray background. And then when I'm doing my soft brush pass, it tends to kind of darken a lot of stuff, which gets it, not only towards the value range of where it's going to be, but just at least closer to the middle. And then in other times where I've been doing studies, I'm starting with a middle gray tone over like all skin tone, because skin tone tends to render, as you start to try to like render it, it pushes up, it pushes down, it's got highlights, it's got shadows. And so starting in the middle just makes it infinitely easier than trying to like figure out how much darker than white you need to make it. Trying to figure out how much lighter than black you need to make it doesn't seem that much better to me. But like everyone's got weird quirks in their brain about how that they process visual information. And so some people are going to just discover that like extremes work for them. And so if you see some artist who's working in a rather extreme way, you're welcome to try it. I'd say go ahead and give it a shot if it sounds cool to you. But like I found that sometimes artists, like when they're learning, will see a very strange, very extreme process, and they'll try it out and it won't work for them. They'll go, man, I must be too dumb for this. Like, I'm not going to have to use this insane thing that I saw that worked so well for this other guy. And it's just like, it doesn't really matter what works for anybody else. Like you have to learn what works for you. Learning art is a matter of personal discovery at the end of the day. And so you should try out every weird trick that you see on the internet and then throw everything away if it doesn't work for you. It's just, it's not valuable to hold on to all of these weird ideas.
When I was in college, taking art classes, one of the professors had us do a charcoal study where we taped off the paper and took the charcoal and made it completely black. And then we weren't allowed to touch any more charcoal. We were only allowed to use our erasers, the gummy erasers. And I was panicked because that's not how my brain works. It was a still life. We were supposed to find, an odd number of things. I had like Chuck Taylors and a glass Coca-Cola bottle with, the light from the window shining behind it. The pieces looked great, but I was really panicked because I knew it was just going to suck. And I kept working at it, and it turned out, in my opinion, to be one of the best pieces I did in my entire college career. I was shocked. I still don't know how it happened. It was just like eraser magic. But so I never poo-poo anybody's method because I never know if it would be good for me or not. There's fun, different ways to do things like that. So
there are, and it's like we really don't know. Like I hate the worst impulse is trying to prejudge, like if you've never seen how it's going to go.
Right.
Like it runs both ways. Like if somebody goes, "Oh, I've got this brilliant idea for an animated series. I wish I could make something I dream about all the time." Be like, "Oh, have you ever like written it or drawn anything for it?" And they go, "Oh, no, I am not good enough yet. I need to like wait until I'm good enough." That's always bullshit. Like, there's no way you can tell if an idea is any good until you've put it on a page, whether it's writing or drawing or whatever. Like we hold these ideas in our heads, believing that we think like we've got something genius that we're just like holding on to that's trapped in our skulls. But like I found over the years that like there's no correlation between my feeling that I have a good idea and whether or not it's actually a good idea. And that the only air judgment I've ever been able to make on my own work, or that anyone I think has ever been able to make on their own work, is by attempting to put it on a page and see if it actually, like, if they actually like it once they can see it in front of them. This is something I do constantly with my mentees, is I just try to get them to make a lot of stuff in part because there's a lot of built up expectation that people get about how things are going to go and what kind of artist they're going to be and how it's all going to work out. It's like, you were experiencing this with the charcoal thing. You're like, "Oh, this is going to suck."
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't know. Like we have the process of working through an idea is like how we discover whether or not it's a good or a bad idea. And
I
like,
experienced it in Huckleberry too.
yeah.
The first gestural live that I took was on hands because, I'm terrible at them. And I wasn't using digital. I was actually using my sketchbook. And after, it was 10 seconds for each thing. And I kept looking at it like, this is so embarrassing that I can't do this. And afterwards, I showed my oldest son, who's not an artist, but does dabble. And his mouth dropped open. He said, "This is you sucking?" And I said, "What?" He said, "I couldn't do that to say if you put a gun to my head." And it kind of twisted my perception a little bit. I was thinking, I'm so hard on myself.
Yeah.
I get the imposter syndrome that Echo was talking about, but those gestural studies are fun.
We're all just totally unequipped to be our own self-critics. Like we're just not good at it. I just like often I've had this experience over and over again. I know every artist has had this experience where they go, "Oh, I drew this thing, it's crap," and then everyone around them goes, "That's the best thing you've ever made." They'll be like, I think I made one of the best drawings I've ever done, and like nobody cares.
Right.
Why is it that like I can't seem to agree with anyone in the world about whether or not any of my work is good? It's like, well, you don't get to tell people whether or not they like your work. You may want to influence it desperately, but you don't get to influence it. You don't get to tell people how you should be received or like how your work should be received. It's just not up to you. And so the more we can like practice in relinquishing that attitude, the healthier we are. Like we should always just strive to do what we think is best as artists. We don't need to like, we don't need to actually make that judgment call. Like show up, you do the job, you do the best you can. And then at the end of it, you put it out into the world for somebody else to like or dislike. And, you know, you have your own private relationship with it, but you don't get to pick whether or not it's any good. There's no point where we get to have control over that process or that part of the whole process. Just not up to us. And it's eternally frustrating. Everybody hates it. Like nobody wants that to be true. And yet nobody's ever really solved that problem.
Yeah. Before I go, can you tell us more about your divination deck? Your Kickstarter's kicking ass and taking names.
Yeah, I was going to wait till a little bit into this and we had a fuller house to talk about it. I'm going to pull it up. Full on fucking do this here. Yeah, if you go to the easiest way to find it is I think go to angelarium.net, put a giant banner at the top of the page. Even if you're on mobile, it should be easy to find. Angelarium.net, you can see there's a big banner here for the Kickstarter. Even a button that says buy it now. It commands you to buy it. It's currently
look at that.
$5 in the last 4 days.
That's great.
I'm very happy with it. Very happy. This was a project I finished last year, and then I was about to self-publish it, and publisher reached out to me to talk to me on my tarot deck, and I was like, well, I got this oracle deck that I'm having a hard time finding a good printer for. And they said, oh yeah, we'll do that. Let's do that first. So this is pre-orders for that thing. It's coming out in January. It's already started the production pipeline for getting printed overseas, and I have it in my contract where I can buy it at cost to be able to sell directly to my fans. And so I'm able to run this thing thanks to a really good contract that's allowing me to like, allow pre-sales to my fans first. And it's, there's been a huge response and I'm overwhelmed by it. So
are you going to sign any of them?
I am. I did this back in 2016. And I offered to sign all of them. And it turned into like 2,500 books that I needed to sign in a warehouse in the summer in Florida with no air conditioning. And we hand shipped everything ourselves. And I'm like, never doing that again. I built relationships with warehouses and distributors, and like the people I'm working with, they have satellite hubs in Australia, Asia, UK, Germany, and like so we were able to do practically worldwide shipping and do it at a cost that's like affordable, without having to deal with a lot of problems of like customs and tariffs and stuff like that, which is fantastic. So
do your fans have a nickname? Like Chuckies or Cumberbitches?
No.
Swifties?
I should do that with something. But yeah, I had this the last time I did this. It took me 5 years to fulfill the Kickstarter because I hadn't finished the art for the book. I didn't know how to write the book, and I got stuck. And then I got swindled by my printer, and I had to sue them to be able to get the money back so I could hire a different printer. And it was a horrible. It was a learning experience. It was this learning experience where I got smashed in the face basically at every step along the way. And then a lot of people were mad because I took $200,000 in funding and then I didn't deliver a product for 5 years, which is justifiably a reason for people to be skeptical. But I have learned my lesson from every step of that. I've improved everything that I was doing. And now I am confidently going to ship this thing early next year. It's going to be a breeze, actually. And it's going to be so easy that I offered the first 100 people who were backing it to like get an autographed copy at the same price. Those sold out instantly.
And
every week I'm going to open up a new batch in order to like give more people the opportunity because it's been going so well. I want to give back to the fans some, and it gives me an opportunity to make more posts about it. Say, hey, there's not another 100 autographed copies coming up. So I'm probably going to be signing at least 400 of these things and shipping them straight out of my house. But I'm comfortable with that. I mean, for the amount of support I've been getting, it's nothing. So very happy that I got a chance to redeem myself. The first one was Angelarium Book of Watchers, and then this is the Oracle of the Fallen it's the same art collection as the last one from theme, largely. There's a new pieces I made last year to fill it out, but like, this is a big do-over. They're really similar in size in the campaigns, really similar in work, same part of the collection. And this time around, I'm going to get to do a fantastic do-over of everything I fucked up back in the day. An opportunity that very few people ever have about their great regrets in life. So I'm looking forward to making this a really comfortable, easy, straightforward thing where everyone's happy with it. Yeah. Absolute confidence I can do it this time because I actually know what I'm doing.
Well, I wish you well.
I've learned a lot over the last, how long has it been? 8 years? Something like that? 7 years? Yeah, 7 years of
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see it.
Well, I can't wait to see it too. I'm looking forward to the decks coming in, getting to sign them and ship them out to people. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Cool. Well, it's good to talk to you again this week.
Thanks for helping me pitch my Kickstarter here.
No problem. All right. I'll let the next person come up. Thank you.
Joke's on you. We don't have anybody behind you in line. The next person in line is Pinky again.
Yeah, they disappeared again.
I want to tell you about one of my favorite things, which is blending modes. Blending modes are like the fucking best.
Tell me.
Okay, so let me tell you about blending modes. All right. So you know about normal layers, because normal is normal. It's the default layer type, and it's just like, it's regular. It's like paint. But what if instead of the paintbrush strokes being made out of like pigment, what if they were made out of light? And they were to just shine onto the page instead? Or what if they were to be made entirely out of shadows and you were painting entirely with shade instead of with like with a pigment that only ever went darker? There's all kinds of weird interactions that can happen, really weird ones, in Photoshop. And what's really interesting about it is that these are called blending modes. And blending modes are universal across all digital art. They exist in all Adobe Suite products, but even beyond that, basically every image editing software, every video editing software, everything for graphic design, and everything in motion graphics, they all use terms to describe these mathematical equations, describe like making things blend together in a way that's different than normal. And they have like mathy ways that they can do this. And they all share the same names, which makes things really easy. So if you learn what you can predictably use them as part of your art process. It's all digital media uses this exact same language, which is really, real. And then one of the things I've found is people's relationship with blending modes, artists' relationship with blending modes, is very similar to everything else in art in that it's very personal. I have blending modes that I love that give me total control over the canvas, that allow me to take a black and white image and bring it to color in this way that sort of like shines and glows and feels natural. And then I've talked to other artists to go, ooh, hard light? Use hard light? How does anyone use hard light for anything? And I go, it's my favorite one. I love it. And it enables all these beautiful things. And I know it inside and out. And everybody else tells me I'm fucking crazy for using hard light. And then I find somebody else and they go, oh my God, you showed me hard light when I was first learning art and I've never put it down. It's my favorite thing I've ever used. And so like everyone has this different suite of blending modes that they sort of learned these interactions with. And they use them like in painting, it's like doing a glaze. Painters use glazes all the time. And the way paint glazes is actually very special in its own right and unreproducible in most digital painting programs.
Right.
Like, because the math is that it's like calculating the middle point between these two different like colors and not actually spreading little flakes of pigment between each other. So like when you put a thin coat of red over everything, it doesn't tint red. It just sort of like, it's chalky, it's gross. It's like blending loose bits of normal layer over the top of a painting does not work like painting thin coats of oil or thin coats of acrylic at all. And it's really frustrating for a lot of traditional artists because they try to do their techniques and they go, it looks like crap. Colors in Photoshop are garbage. And I go, I know, but they have blending modes. Blending modes are like glazes if they were made of math and were like as powerful as the whole universe. They're incredible. And so I find that like people who have never worked in digital, haven't worked that much in digital media, this is very confusing for them. But oh my God, if you can like play around with it and do some tutorials and understand like ways in which you can apply blending modes into your thing, it's a language that is like, it's just like any other computer thing where when you learn the language of it, it carries over into all these other, as a soft skill, into all these other like realms. And it's like one of the most powerful and unique things about digital media. There's no replication for it across physical media. It's like, but it's like all digital media. It's great. It's this brilliant, powerful, universal language, and everyone should know it a little bit. Welcome, Jacob.
Before you start, real quick, I just wanted to mention that Gallifrey has been teaching me a little bit here and there about and a lot of people actually have been helping me figure out Photoshop, and she actually had showed me those the other day. I don't know if she mentioned that she's been showing me Photoshop, but she absolutely has been, and it's been a lifesaver. But hi, Jagabon. I will mute myself now.
Hi, welcome. Jagabon, if you're talking, we cannot hear you. That's what Ancient Chaos says all the time.
I thought it was just me.
No. I saw you mute and unmute, so I know you're trying. I'll let you know when I hear you. In the meantime, I'll make a new layer and start getting some details here.
We also have MK. If you want to let MK go until you can maybe leave it.
Mess with settings a little bit. If you abandon the fight, feel free to step off the stage. Otherwise, you're welcome to stick around and give us a try for a couple of minutes while you.
I was just gonna say sometimes when you leave and come back, it helps.
Oh, that too.
So how are you doing the hard light?
So what I do is I make a new layer and I set it to hard light. This is what it would look like normally. And then the two things that I'm doing with hard light is one, I'm going to pick like the local color, which in this case for like a red dress is red. And then at a fairly low opacity, I'm just kind of glazing it in on top. And it does magic things. Hello, Jacob.
Hi. Sorry about that. Sorry. I'm still new.
No problem. Common issue.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good. No. I wanted to ask about blending mode since you brought it up. It was perfect segue.
Sure.
So when I digitally paint, I'm not happy with some of the experimental processes I had because I find I can create so many layers of blending modes for this section or that section. And currently what I've tried to do is I do a copy merge, if you know what it is, I assume. And that way I can make checkpoints for stages.
Just for the whole thing, you have a copy merge like this.
And I build on top of that merge. But then it's so ugly to organize for one. And then like to backtrack, it's like it makes a big file. So I'm wondering if you ever do this copy merge, or do you really just stick to like one layer for a specific fate of the whole thing or section? How do you organize it?
So what I do, I found that I haven't found a lot of other artists that work the way that I do when it comes to this specific question about layer management. But I love the way that I work in layers. It's like I get so much benefit out of this. I like using blending modes. I like experimenting with different ones. I'll go like, I need to like add some glow on this. I'm going to go ahead and add a soft light really quick. and then I will paint in a little soft light, get a little effect out of it. And then it's like, well, I can't go in underneath it, right?
Yeah.
So I just make a new layer on top and then I keep going. Like I could make a copy merged layer, but I don't actually need to. Like I'm not sure why the copy merged layer, like I might be missing the value of the copy merged layer for you, because I find that if you're working on the top layer, it doesn't matter. So I have this sort of top layer mentality where I'm able to preserve all of these blending modes beneath, because everything is always happening from bottom to top. I don't go back in and reorder and work on separate elements lower in the stack. It's always just up, 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 like layers of mixed media. And that allows me to go, oh, let me show you how I worked on this. And I can go and peel the layers back, and it'll actually time travel back to an early stage of the painting. And so it's almost like a history state.
So there
It's
is
really nice for demos, because I can show, somebody goes, oh, well, how'd you make that painting? And I'll go, oh, let's figure it out. I don't remember. I just open my PSD up, and then we peel the layers back one by one, get to watch the whole thing and backwards and forwards.
what if there was like two characters or like a separate object?
I typically don't separate separate objects onto separate layers. I don't find a lot of value in it. Part of it is because my painterly style means that there's a lot of edges that are kind of getting blended between stuff, and trying to like maintain like that alpha is really tough. And so I just, if there's more than one figure, I just, it's all treated holistically as one big canvas.
Okay. And yeah, that's very traditional thinking.
Yeah, it is a lot more like mixed media than it is like a lot of digital painting, where elements are being broken out into separate layers. It would be less viable if I've seen some people use enough switching between blending modes and also layer styles that it requires them to constantly merge down. So they just like merge down to the bottom. And so it's like, my philosophy is like always on the top, and some people have this like always on the bottom strategy of like, they'll be adding new layers and new blending modes and stuff. And then as soon as they say, that's it, they lock it in and go back to layer 0. And so they never have any layers in their final PSD, and it keeps their file size down, but it's a destructive enough process that like, I personally really like the ability to like go and time travel through my piece. That's the sort of benefit that you get that's not possible with traditional media. And it's something I've always I feel like I've gotten a lot of value out of it.
I get what you're saying. Because for me, I'm also always worried about like getting feedback that, oh, I need to change this and that. And that's why it's like all these layers, there's just so many layers that I just try to keep as archive to change it. But then it's like, it's just so ugly.
I need people that beyond that they would make so many layers, and they'd have so many revisions that they would have to start making revision files. So they would have to merge down and make a new file. And so they had 30 PSDs, each of which have merged the previous down into the bottom layer. And then they stacked tons of layers of minor revisions up. And to me, it just seemed like hell, because it's like, what are you ever going to go and dig through that basement of like old thrown away layers? It was like digital hoarding behavior. And I'm like, I can't abide this. This makes me stressed out just looking at it. And so I don't know, like I try to only switch layers when I'm either needing a new blending mode for something specific, or I feel really unsure of my next step. Like if I am worried I'm about to fuck something up, I will make a new layer just so I can flip it on and off and double check to make sure I'm not crazy about the changes I'm making. But yeah, those are the main circumstances I make new layers. And so I will sometimes end up, I think, with about 30 layers, not for a study. It's usually smaller than that, but like for a big personal piece, it might be 30 layers. And that's like, at really high resolutions, it still kind of can get into like needing to switch from a PSD to a PSB, because they like can support larger file sizes without being corrupted. If you're getting into PSB territory regularly, you're definitely like Photoshop badass. That's what the B stands for. But yeah, I typically try not to like, because my workflow doesn't cause a distinct amount of stress on the file size. I just deal with whatever file size issues arise from my workflow, because it's not always making a big problem for me. Only sometimes.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'll leave this stage for someone else. Thank you.
Sure. Speaking of copy merge, this is the other thing that makes a new layer. When I go, oh man, I need to make the nose shorter. Scooch that up. The Monty Python effect there.
I didn't realize that the person had left.
Yep.
Love how you can just give it a whole nose job.
Yeah, I mean that's like, that's one of the joys of digital painting is it's just like,
I know.
oh, I don't like the length of this nose. I'm gonna scooch it up a centimeter or whatever, and it just scooches up, and you make a new layer. But if they're both normal, you can smash them together, and you don't end up with a lot of problems. It's when they start being different blending modes that like sometimes merging down can be an issue. Because if I were to make like a one that's like an overlay layer, and I were to make some changes here, like it looks like an overlay now. It's adding this nice glow effect. But then when I merge it down, it becomes, all those brushstrokes become normal mode because they're merging with the blending mode below them.
Okay.
This is the problem that we were just talking about, is that like, you can't merge different blending modes together while preserving their effect unless you do a copy merge first. So like if I wanted to merge that down, it would have to go all the way down into the background. And so I need to create a checkpoint by having a merged layer, which is just like, I don't know. I think I'll just like leave it as its own little layer. It creates a smaller file size, just leaving each of these as their own separate little bits. Hello, hey, welcome to the stage.
Hello. Got a question. Just a small one. Very, 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 very short.
Sure.
If you're on the go and you're not at a PC, have you considered using like a mobile application like Procreate or something to get your work done, like in a professional sense? Would you take that? Mobile application?
I was commissioned once to work in Procreate, and I had a really bad experience. I didn't like it. We were just talking about the number of layers that I like to use, maybe about 30 layers or whatever. Nothing crazy. Well, it's not crazy for Photoshop, but Procreate hates it. When you try to create a heavily layered file in Procreate, you run out. It just tells you like, sorry, pal, that's the most layers I'm willing to give you. And I'm like, why? But that's just like a drawback of working on a mobile app, is that they have weird hard limitations about like file size and things like that. So and then like RAM usage. So I don't really enjoy working with Procreate very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I like have never really thought about it as like a real solution. And I thought maybe it'd be nice to try to work while traveling sometimes. So I've experimented with a few solutions for it, and I've discovered that I just hate working while traveling also. So it realized it's not a problem I need to solve, because if I'm going to travel, I'm just going to choose not to work during that time, or maybe I'll just check my email, but I won't paint digitally much while I'm traveling. I've tried several times, and it's always been painful.
I've got another question about other software.
Sure.
I do a bit of vector art, so more like line art, and I've discovered a software called Paint Tool Site. Have you heard of this software or something similar to that?
I got it right here, Paint Tool Sci.
Hey, yeah,
there it is.
Yeah.
Paint Tool Sci is the most hipster painting program ever. I love it. I think Paint Tool Sci is super cool, but also I can't recommend it to anybody because it's, I mean, you've seen it. It's janky. It's kind of like,
I think For some reason, I think it blends paints like watercolor better than Photoshop does, but maybe I just don't know how to use Photoshop properly.
No, you're right. It does. It does. CSP, Clip Studio Paint, is modeled its brush engine after Psy, and
Wow.
it is like much more similar to Psy than it is to Photoshop.
And is that a paid program? Clip Studio Paint.
Clip Studio Paint, it is, yes.
I'll save that later. Is there?
Yeah. Check it out.
Like
Clip Studio
real-
Paint has the same license across both mobile and desktop. So if you like the idea of working on an iPad, it's one purchase can get you Clip Studio Paint for both. It's the same interface.
And do you think that's better than that other software, Procreate, for mobile?
Oh, yeah, light years better. Yeah.
Okay. So okay, wonderful.
It's
Thank you
but
so much.
I have to qualify it that is a matter of taste. So the fact that I hate Procreate doesn't mean anything objectively, but I do hate it.
What about the line tool in Paint Tool Sci? Have you found anything that kind of does vectors like that? Because I tried Illustrator and it's very difficult to like have things follow curves that you sketched up on paper. Whereas Paint Tool Sci seems to be very organic and easy to use. Do you have a suggestion for something else that does
I
that?
never work in vector, so I don't.
Ah.
I haven't tried the line tool and Paint Tool Sci.
To dive?
The way I use the line tool in Photoshop is as a raster, because you can set the line tool as a raster element, and then wait, what's going on? Okay.
I mean,
And then you can use it to like sketch in as like almost like a blocky brush, because and then you change the thickness. It used to it's doing something very weird. where it's like,
I've never seen anyone do that before, ever.
I watched a guy do a demo of this once where he was sketching in a skyline for buildings, and he was just
How?
like brushing things in like this. And I thought, oh, that's actually a really cool way of doing it, because there's no way to make the paintbrush tool do that,
Literally. Yeah.
because it makes these perfect square edges at the beginning and end of all the terminals. And so you can do a kind of, and then you can also, the number keys change the opacity.
Oh,
You could have a layer like this.
That's wonderful.
So when I hear line tool, this is the one way I've used the line tool, and so that's how I think about it.
Wonderful.
But yeah, you can, if you set the mode from shape or path to pixels, you can start to paint with the line tool in Photoshop. I don't know if Psy can do that. It might be able to.
So in Photoshop, I would normally draw the lines and then I would right click and go stroke, you know? That's the only way that I know how to use a line tool in Photoshop. But that's actually changed everything. That's a big game changer for me. Thank you so much for that.
Good, great. I'm glad I'm able to pass that along. It's a trick I haven't used in a long time.
Okay. Well, that's all I've got. Thank you so much for that information.
Yeah. Well, feel free to ask anything in the future. I'm always available.
All the best. Bye.
Yeah, you too. Let's see. I'm doing so much, doing little demos and asides here, that I am not going to finish my study this session for the first time ever. I am like not going to have a finished piece at the end of this thing. 'Cause I got 20 minutes, and I'm like, I'm way behind.
I'm here if you're here. I'm not in a hurry.
No, I got to run at 5 too.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
I'm gonna be producing the least finished. I don't think I'm gonna post it like this. I'm probably gonna come back to it later this evening. I'll work on it a little privately. Maybe hang out in the voice chat over at Huckleberry. Work on it a little bit.
maybe I'll come visit.
Yeah, come by. It's a cozy little corner of the internet.
I like it. I've been in there. I haven't been able to stick around to hear you when you were talking, because usually I'm at work. But and hopefully I will be able to catch more of you, especially now that I can relate to the Photoshop element of it. I love the way you create all art. didn't have any kind of way to visualize what I was going to do once I got Photoshop, because I also suffer from executive dysfunction, and holding on to the memory of any kind of instruction is not ideal for me.
Well, nobody learns art academically. As
No.
much as there is a lot of academia around art and there is value in it, nobody learns art by being told all the art stuff. Like it's a thing that has to be practiced and experienced firsthand. And so like there's a huge amount of industry of people sitting around listening to art lecturing. And but the real experience of art is in doing. Like what's left over afterwards, the image itself is like a little bit disposable, especially when it comes to studies.
Yeah.
But it's like the real value in art is in making it and the time that you spend making it. Everyone's so worried they're going to be good or whatever. It's like, no, just like touch the stuff. Therefore, it's a tactile, emotional thing. It's not and like the things that we get to experience as like a viewer, it's just like, we're just there looking at the DVD extras at the end. The movie is like the experience that's happening inside the artist's mind. We're always on the outside of art, unless we're making it.
It's true. It's true. Could you, before you go, maybe just show me how you move that, like resize the image one more time?
Control T.
Control T. There we go. Need to write it down. I'm going to do that. Right
T
now.
for transform. What you're looking for is not resize. It's called transform.
I'm gonna call
Knowing
it
the terminology is a pretty huge part of learning this, of digital art. Digital art is a lot of vocabulary. And if you can get on top of the vocabulary, you're going to have a really easy time looking up the answers just about any questions.
What if I called it T for tinify?
Sure.
To make it tiny.
Whatever mnemonic helps. But yeah,
No, transform. I
like,
get it.
this is the thing I think I kind of quietly didn't like internalize without realizing until like maybe this year, was that like artists all had like collectively kind of worked out this terminology, but that like it is not intuitive in the slightest. And that like outsiders, they would, if they heard any of these terminology, these terms, wouldn't mean anything to them. And so like, of course it would all seem kind of wizard-like and mysterious because it's, there's all these terms that sound like they are abstract, like they sound kind of, a lot of art terms sound like these kind of like vague descriptions of like, a sense of something and not really that scientific, when many of the descriptors in art and in digital art are actually very specific. And the level of specificity when talking about art can actually get quite high, especially when you're talking about the way in which tools are being used. So if you can get a handle on that terminology, like you can start to enter into like a bit of a secret world of the conversation that's happening.
Love it.
And then also there's one of the eternal problems with computers is trying to figure out how do you ask the correct question of Google to tell you what you need to know.
Yeah.
And that's like, especially, it's like I had a problem once in Photoshop early on, where every time I made a brush stroke, everything would always only get darker and never get lighter. I'd found the hotkey to do this, where everything I made always darkened, but and if I picked a lighter color, it would like do something weird, and it was like weird looking, and then if I picked a darker color, it would like darken it, and I was like, I cannot figure out what's going on. The layer,
Like if you cross the line, it goes over and like
I'm like, what
square of darker. That's what's going on with me right now.
And so I ended up the way I fixed it was by uninstalling Photoshop and reinstalling it. But I discovered that in the context menu on the brush, you can change the blending mode of the brush strokes themselves, not just the layer. And that like this is actually potentially a very powerful tool for somebody who has like planned for it. But it's for the most part like a deeply obscure feature that like there's theoretically a hotkey for that. Like I was mashing the keyboard trying to hit something else, and I managed to change the blending mode for the brush, not even knowing this menu existed. And so I had to reinstall the whole software. And then you go ahead and try to Google it is the point I was trying to make. It's like brushstroke always gets darker in Photoshop. And it's like, well, okay, what do you mean darker? What is that?
Oh God, I literally, you just answered a question that I was starting to deal with a few minutes ago. Like, it's like the opacity isn't high enough on the brush stroke that I'm making right now, but when I cross over it, just the section that gets crossed over is darker. It's like putting another layer of watercolor over.
Yeah. I wonder if, you changed the blending mode on your brush by accident.
Yeah. It only happens when I cross paths. Like if I go back over the.
Yeah.
It's probably what happens.
Also, certain brushes have that. I have a brush called Scrapey that does that on purpose. That automatically sets to multiply mode. And the reason I like it is that if you go and make a light, you see I've got a light color here. I'm doing some grass. Go and make some grass here. But then if I go back over the same thing, it'll darken it. You can see it starts to make dark strokes through it.
And it looks like wheat.
And so what I'm able to do is like I was doing like some like grass and things, and I was like, okay, well if I go over the strokes, when you're looking at like these overlapping little stalks, the highlights and the shadows, they all run kind of parallel to each other. And so the traditional way I would do this is I would go through with a brush and I would go, okay, well, here is the highlight, and then take another color and be like, okay, and here's the shadow. And like try to scrape in a highlight and a shadow for every fucking twig in the entire field.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh wait, well if I have this brush that has this blending mode on it, it'll like naturally create like some highlights and shadows that all kind of run the same way.
I want that brush.
And so it does little stuff like this. If you just get it at the right angle, it starts to like do this thing where it makes a little highlight and a shadow that are all kind of like cooperating with each other. And I was like, oh, that's really fucking cool. Like somebody thought of that. Good job. You made brush blending modes not awful. That's quite the feat. One of the
I
things
feel a little blessed that I got to do this with you today.
Hey, you're always welcome to pop on stage and ask me questions about whatever dumb shit you are struggling with in Photoshop. Like, I love answering this stuff.
I love struggling with dumb shit, so it works out.
Yeah. It's not a straight line learning.
Galfrey is back up on the request if you don't mind.
Welcome, Rebecca.
Absolutely. I won't be able to hear her, but you will.
Oh no, because it's her. I was hoping to tell her. I'll send her a link. I wanted to talk to her about the brushes on your website. I don't know if Scratchy is in that group.
Yeah, not yet. I got this from on the resources channel and on Huckleberry. There's a bunch of people who have like linked over to brush sets, and the Scrapey brush was, I think, in the one that Ash had posted.
Of course.
There's one of Ash's brushes that I borrowed. I couldn't figure out most of what her brushes do. They're sort of beyond me. I'm like, one of these days need to get a tour. And but that one, I was like playing around with it and immediately started doing something, and I went, oh, I know what to do that. I know what that one's for. I know how to use that. And I don't know what it's actually for, but I used it for that in the painting, and I was like, this is awesome.
Nice.
Well, that's all I wanted to do is make sure everybody knew you had not just the brushes, but the gradients on there and the actions. The P
Huckleberry.art.
action.
I've got a few different free goodies on Huckleberry.art, and I'm going to hopefully add more over time. Like it's really bad actually. Like when I open up the blending modes here, and I'm like, oh, you got to learn blending modes. There's like 20 of these. There's like 300 blending modes in Krita. They have all of these, and then like 200 something more that I've never fucking heard of that don't appear in any other software. And it's like, and then like on the toolbar, it's got this big toolbar, but all of these tools in Photoshop all do different things. Half of Krita's toolbar is just the shape tool, but like give it a bunch of extra icons. It's really annoying. I wish I could spend a little time helping the Krita people make the program just a little bit more streamlined and a little bit more user-friendly, because it's wonderful that they have such a powerful tool that's available for free for everyone. And if it was just slightly more usable, it would be like maybe one of the best options on the market, paid or otherwise. But it's like, it seems like it's a kind of a community labor of love thing. And, people have their own beliefs inside their own communities. And so it's got all these weird idiosyncrasies that I don't love, that are never going to change. But anyways, yeah, I'm a slow painter today. Can't believe we've been here for 2 hours and I've only gotten this far.
Well, you've been actually assisting me.
Yeah, and I'm pretty happy with the face, like decently happy with the face. It's not a great likeness, but I
A decent likeness for the amount of work you were able to. I mean, it's beautiful. I would know who it was if I knew the lady.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I hold myself to a pretty impossible standard when it comes to these things. I've never really. There's only been a couple of these studies I've ever walked away from and gone, "Damn, I did a good job." It's sort of the curse of being an artist. It's just that self-critic. But I also I use these sessions in order to try to constantly push myself, and that pushing has resulted. I've never walked away from this like really soured on my day by the quality of my work. But the constant desire to see the work become better has like caused me to grow tremendously as an artist over the last like few months.
Yeah.
I've gotten way, way better at these things. And so, I try to acknowledge where I succeed and where I fail as realistically as possible, because it's those signals from the success and failure that are ultimately causing me to grow. So I try to take my own self-criticism like seriously, but not emotionally.
I think she just needs her eyelashes on. Otherwise, she's perfect.
She's got like, how many eyelashes? Oh, eyelashes. I didn't think the eyebrows. I don't know the difference. I don't know what parts of people are. I don't make a lot of eye contact.
Well, the under eyelid, how's that? She doesn't really have a lot of eyelashes.
She doesn't have a lot of eyelashes either.
The under her eyelid's a little darker, like in between her.
The fold there. Yeah, you're right. I managed to whiff on that a little bit.
Now she's perfect.
I was like, man, she's not much in the way of eyelashes either.
I totally distracted you from doing that. I saw you going for it, and then I was like, hey, over here.
It's fine. Doing art as a group experience and getting constantly distracted, I find it be quite fun.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, finding a lot of edges to kind of like lose and let go blurry is something I've always done in terms of like finding edges to soften up to make like, these smears and stuff. But there is a level of imprecision, tactical imprecision, that I feel like I'm just starting to brush close to when it comes to these studies. The last couple of ones I was like tightening up a lot, and it was causing me a lot of problems. And then as I got close to the end of my time with it, I was like, it's too tightened up, it's too rigid, I'm moving too slow. And it's like all the extra time has yielded lower quality work instead of higher quality. So I need to not only do I need to I need to loosen up, not just for the sake of efficiency, but for the sake of quality. And I am exploring this idea of treating the whole thing a little bit more contingently, like that every edge is kind of contingent, and that I don't want to treat things as being as solid as they are, just let everything be brushstrokes and not try to simulate everything, but try to let it just be the way that it looks for real as I see it, and not as a rigid understanding of where all the edges are supposed to be realistically.
Like looking at it with a microscope and thinking that you're going to get every hair.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but even more than that, just realizing that hey, that the impression of things are often much softer than they are for real. That our impression of things tends to be fairly softer on the edges, and to start respecting that fact by worrying less about the edges, especially early on. Because I was always trying to do this thing where I go, okay, well, here's a really loose edge, so I'm going to loosen that up quite a bit. And then here's a really tight edge. I'm going to tighten this down a lot. And then I found that all of it was getting a little bit overly compressed. The loose edges were starting to turn into mush, and they're starting to be impossible to smooth out. They were never smooth enough. And then the hard edges were always too hard. They were feeling unrealistic and kind of graphic looking. What I started to do a little bit more of recently is to try to let the thing just be an impression of the painting is just an impression of the thing. Just be more impressionistic about it broadly. And I could probably continue going and get smaller and smaller details, but I've been enjoying this feeling of just letting it be a little softer everywhere.
I love the depth in the hair.
I started it with the hairs where it started. Is I almost immediately realized I was way overdoing it on the hair. And when I started just treating the hair as a much softer thing, and always making sure that I was treating it with soft edges, but I was still defining where the highlights were being found, that I was getting this really pleasing contrast of the tighter skin features and then these looser hair bits. And that balance was very appealing to look at. And it was satisfying to work on too. It was felt like I was getting everything I wanted out of it. And now I'm trying to treat the whole painting a little bit more like that.
It's gone from it the way I see it right now is it looks I don't know if you care for feedback, but the photograph reminds me of something that would have been taken of my mother back in the 50s or 60s, 70s in high school. You know what I mean? I have a couple of pictures like that, and the painting looks almost Renaissance.
Yeah, the effect I want to create with this softness that I'm talking about is absolutely a highlight of the Renaissance.
It's pulling it off. It's beautiful.
I am beginning to approach it, is what I feel like. And I can pull it off if I continue to spend time with it and respect it and, approach it carefully and gently. I think I can get there. But it's going to be a lot of paintings and a lot of failures and a lot of little experiments before I finally approach that Renaissance feel authentically. It's not a filter. It's going to be literally just learning how to place the brushstrokes right. And those skills will carry over into other mediums because it's it's a kind of holistic understanding of what's creating the look of it rather than simply just an expression of the tools. Like, it's not just like learning the order that you need to do filters in or whatever. There's real artistry to be learned in digital painting, which is one of the reasons I've always loved it. I didn't get to this hand at all.
She's still wearing her mitten. Don't worry.
Yeah, she's just got one flipper. It's just a little case of, pharmaceutical companies got more skis.
Actually, kind of love like the unfinished like bits that are sometimes hanging off of an old painting.
Oh, yeah. Yep. But how do you do that in a way that makes it feel like you're not being a lazy asshole?
And it just reminds you that it's not a photograph. You know what I mean? It's like there's a painting so good that like you suddenly step back to reality when you see like that white corner or the hand that like is just kind of a.
Well, the little flakes of imprecision that were left over from the very first layer are still showing through, and that's one of the reasons I like to keep things imprecise.
Yeah.
Because it gives a sense of like a hand-touched feel of like you can see where that hand was and where it was not.
Yeah.
And like it reveals the intention of the artist. Whenever I see one of those half-finished portraits, like that half-finished portrait of George Washington that's so famous,
Yes.
I saw it in person. It was in a museum in Nashville, Tennessee, of all places. Like kind of tucked away in a museum. I was like, no way, is this the real one? I'm wondering, honestly, if there's multiples, just because I was like, I thought it was very odd where I saw it. And the feeling I always get from seeing those sort of half-finished portraits is that, like, I wonder where the artist needed to be where they weren't going to be at the easel anymore.
Right.
Like, you're seeing a person who's run out of time or, like, been dragged away to something else. Like, their life got in the way of them finishing this piece. And when you see those precisely painted 1,000-hour Renaissance paintings of a fruit bowl or whatever, you're like, who the fuck has the time at any point in history? Who the fuck ever had the time to be able to put this much time into a fruit bowl? But then when you see a half-finished portrait, you go, I wonder what, like, there was something in that person's life that was more important than this painting. I wonder what it is.
Way, tell them that they were finished enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or they're just like, you've been called to war, or like you've been, like, what thing, good or bad, could have like led to this person no longer desiring to finish this very masterfully started portrait that is now so significant that it's in a museum and yet remains unfinished for eternity. Like, do you get the sense that when they set the brush down, did they not know they were going to pick it back up again?
Oh my gosh, that's like a pretty deep question. And I think that he painted like a printer. Like all of that, it's almost like I feel like it's weird to have like just this one white spot. How do you?
Oh yeah. Well, there's oil painters that do that where they kind of like, they call it window painting, where they like take a segment and they do all of the color and all the rendering that's going to be in there, and they take another segment, they do the same thing.
Oh,
They kind of work through the painting. They do like, they get ahead of themselves a little bit with a little block in, but then they like, before they move on to the next area, they've got it all kind of worked out. They know everything they need to know about it early on. It takes a level of mastery that I've never understood fully.
here. Who did take that guy away from George Washington?
Yeah. What happened to him?
Were they?
Cannonball? What's going on?
Was he one of Washington's soldiers?
I don't know.
Wasn't he
Or
used to
was
be a
there
general?
something? Was he like something else? I mean, you're painting George Washington. Like, what else you have that's more important than painting first president of the United States? Was his wife just like, Hubert, I need you to vacuum up the drawing room? Like, we all have things that like pull us away from stuff that we leave unfinished things in our lives all the time. Yet there's the idea of an unfinished thing sitting in a museum. It's so it begs a lot of interrogation, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clean up a few broad strokes here. There's a little bit of glazing to just focus the lighting a little bit closer to how it was in the reference, and get some areas like to a level of medium polish. Now that I've got this like higher polish face, I would love to do this one hand, but I'm already 10 minutes over, so I think I'm gonna call it here. I had a lot of fun hanging out with you today, Kinky.
I had a lot of fun hanging out with you. I hope we can do it again someday.
Oh yeah. Come by Huckleberry and bring your painting and do a little screen share, and don't be shy about beginner stuff. We got plenty of beginners on the server. My collaborator on the project, Dustin, he just started painting in the last few weeks.
Wonderful.
And so
I will be there.
All right. Well, I'm gonna save this file just in case lightning strikes my house. And perhaps I'll never come back to it, and this will be my portrait of George Washington.
So with the half mitt in hand.
Uh-huh. Otherwise, I'm actually pretty stoked. I'm pretty happy with how
she came out amazing, honestly.
So this really like simpler color. It's like all shades of red and orange makes it so much easier. Just have one sort of knowing whether it needs to be a little bit more red, a little bit more yellow. So almost as easy as black and white. So I was looking forward to this one just because it's got such cool lighting and such a simple color scheme. So I'm going to probably put a little bit more time into this tonight, but I've got to go for now. Thanks everyone for showing up. Feel free to hit me up over at Huckleberry, and I'll see you back here next Tuesday as my normal time, probably with Ancient Chaos administrating thing. Thanks, Kinky, for watching over me this time. And thanks everyone who came on stage to ask me questions. It was really fun today. I'll see you guys next week. Goodbye.